You're bleeding energy every single day, and you don't even know it. Every criticism that stings, every rejection that haunts you, every offhand comment that ruins your entire week. You're giving away your power to people who aren't even thinking about you anymore. This isn't about becoming cold. This isn't about not caring. This is about emotional detachment, the single most powerful skill that separates those who survive from those who dominate. In the next hour, you're going to learn exactly how to stop taking things personally, how to protect your mental space, and how to move through life untouchable. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Other people's opinions are none of your business. Let's start with a truth that will change everything. Other people's opinions are none of your business. Read that again. Other people's opinions are none of your business. Not your family's, not your friends, not your co-workers, not strangers on the internet. None of it is your business. Here's why. When someone criticizes you, they're not talking about you. They're talking about themselves. When someone judges your choices, they're revealing their own fears. When someone mocks your ambition, they're defending their own inaction. You are not the problem. You are the mirror. Think about the person who criticizes your career change. Why are they so invested in what you do? Because your courage terrifies them. Your willingness to risk everything highlights their unwillingness to risk anything. They're not worried about you failing. They're worried about you succeeding, because your success would prove that the cage they're living in has always been unlocked. That's the key. Their criticism isn't about you. It's about them. The person mocking your goals? They gave up on theirs. The person questioning your decisions? They've been living on autopilot for years. The person telling you to be realistic? They settled, and now they need you to settle too, so they don't have to face what they've sacrificed. 90% of what people say about you is projection. It's their insecurities, their failures, their regrets, wrapped up and handed to you like it's your problem to solve. It's not. Their opinion is their reality, not yours. Let me say that again. Their opinion is their reality, not yours. They're speaking from their limited perspective, their unique pain, their specific fears. Their words don't define you, they define them. And yet, you're bleeding energy trying to manage what they think. You're editing your life for an audience that isn't even paying attention. You're dimming your light so others feel comfortable in their darkness. Stop. Here's what happens when you seek external validation. You create a permission-based life. Every time you wait for approval, you hand someone else the remote control to your emotions. You become a puppet. You dance for applause that will never satisfy you, because the need for validation is infinite. You get one person's approval, and now you need 10 more. You get 10, and now you need 100. It never ends. The chase never stops, and while you're performing for an audience that changes its mind every 5 minutes, your life is passing you by. Real-world example, the entrepreneur who has a business idea, a good one, maybe even a great one. But they don't launch. Why? Because their friends don't get it, because their family thinks it's risky, because their former colleagues said it's been done before. So they wait, they tweak, they delay. They sacrifice years, actual years, of potential success for the comfort of people who will never take the risk themselves. And here's the brutal truth, those people criticizing from the sidelines, they're not going to celebrate when you finally succeed. They're going to find new reasons to diminish it. You got lucky. The timing was right. Must be nice. You don't need their permission. You never did. Their approval won't make you successful. Their disapproval won't make you fail. The only thing their opinion does is distract you from the work. So stop asking for validation. Stop explaining yourself. Stop waiting for the green light from people who are standing still. Their opinion is their reality, not yours. That phrase needs to become automatic. When someone judges you, immediately think, their opinion is their reality, not yours. Your coworker says your idea won't work. Their opinion is their reality, not yours. Your parent says you're making a mistake. Their opinion is their reality, not yours. A stranger online calls you delusional. Their opinion is their reality, not yours. You see what happens here? You stop absorbing. You stop defending. You stop caring. Because here's what you now understand. When people speak about you, They're really speaking about themselves. The criticism reveals the critic, not the criticized. Let them have their opinions. Let them judge. Let them doubt. None of it is your business. Your business is your mission, your growth, your standards, your execution. That's it. Everything else is noise. And the moment you stop treating other people's opinions like they're your responsibility, the moment you stop managing their comfort at the expense of your progress, you become free. Not reckless, not arrogant, not dismissive of everyone. Free, free to try, free to fail, free to succeed without needing external validation to prove it was worth it. You already know it's worth it. That's all that matters. Their opinion is their reality, not yours. Drill this into your consciousness. Make it reflexive. Make it automatic. Because the truth is simple. You will never please everyone. You will never get universal approval. And even if you did, it wouldn't change anything about your actual life. So stop auditioning for people who aren't even in the theater. Stop performing for critics who will never applaud. Stop waiting for permission from people who are afraid to give it to themselves. Other people's opinions are none of your business. Say it out loud right now. Other people's opinions are none of my business. Feel that weight lift. That's freedom. That's the first step toward emotional detachment. You've just reclaimed the power you've been giving away for free. Now let's go deeper. Because it's not enough to stop caring what people think. You also need to stop explaining yourself to them. That's next. Chapter 2. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter. You've stopped taking their opinions personally. Good. Now stop explaining yourself to them. This is where most people fail. They reclaim their power for about 5 minutes, and then someone questions their decision, and suddenly they're back in defense mode, explaining, justifying, prosecuting their own choices like they're on trial. Stop. Every time you explain your decisions to someone who didn't ask and won't support you anyway, you're subconsciously seeking permission you don't need. Read that again. You're seeking permission you don't need. And here's what happens. The more you explain, the more you convince yourself you might be wrong. You start questioning your own judgment. You start second-guessing decisions you were confident about 5 minutes ago. You're doing their work for them. They didn't even have to plant the doubt. You did it yourself by over-explaining. Here's the truth. Explanation is not required. Justification is not required. Your reasoning is not public property. You don't owe anyone a detailed breakdown of why you're doing what you're doing. Not your skeptical relatives, not your judgmental friends, not your nosy co-workers. Nobody. Your life is not a democracy. Your decisions don't require a vote. So stop campaigning for approval. Let me give you a real-world example. Someone decides to change careers. 35 years old, stable job, decent salary. But they're miserable. They've been miserable for years, so they decide to make a move, go back to school, start a business, pivot into something that actually excites them. And immediately the questions start. Why would you leave a secure job? What if it doesn't work out? Don't you think you're too old? Have you really thought this through? And here's where the trap is set. Most people respond by explaining. They lay out their entire thought process. They justify every angle. They present a case like they're trying to win a jury over. And what happens? The skeptic finds holes. They always do. Because they're not looking for reassurance. They're looking for confirmation that you're making a mistake, so they feel better about not taking risks themselves. You can't win that game, so don't play it. Here's what you say instead. I've made my decision. That's it. 5 words, no justification, no explanation, no apology. I've made my decision. And then silence. Let them sit with their discomfort. Let them squirm. Let them push for more information. You don't budge. Because here's the key. Their confusion is not your responsibility. Their understanding is not your job. You don't need them to agree with you. You don't need them to support you. You don't even need them to understand you. You need you to commit to you. That's all. Now, I'm not saying you become a robot. I'm not saying you shut everyone out. There are people in your life who've earned access to your reasoning. Your inner circle. The 3 to 5 people who've proven their loyalty, who celebrate your wins, who show up in your losses. They get context. They get the full picture. They've earned it. Everyone else? They get results. They don't get the process. They don't get the behind the scenes. They don't get the play-by-play of your decision-making. They get to see the outcome, and that's generous enough. Because here's what you need to understand. Most people asking questions aren't actually curious. They're testing you. They're waiting for you to crack. They're searching for doubt in your voice so they can amplify it. Don't give them the ammunition. The person who's solid in their decision doesn't need to convince anyone. They just move. Think about the most successful people you know, the ones who actually execute. Do they spend hours explaining themselves to doubters? No. They make a decision and they move in silence. They don't announce every pivot. They don't justify every risk. They don't defend every choice. They just do the work. And then they let the results speak. That's power. That's what you're building toward. But right now, you're still stuck in explanation mode. You're still giving away your power by trying to make people comfortable with your discomfort. Stop. Your growth is supposed to make people uncomfortable. Your evolution is supposed to challenge their stagnation. Your courage is supposed to expose their fear. That's not your problem to fix. You don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You don't need their understanding. You need your commitment. That's it. So practice this. I've made my decision. Say it in the mirror. Say it out loud. Get comfortable with how final it sounds. Because it is final. Not arrogant, not dismissive, just certain. When your cousin asks why you're moving across the country, I've made my decision. When your friend questions why you're ending that relationship, I've made my decision. When your coworker wonders why you're turning down the promotion, I've made my decision. And then you stop talking. No follow-up, no elaboration, no defense. You've said everything that needs to be said. Here's what happens next. They'll push. They'll try to get more out of you. They'll act offended that you're not sharing. They might even accuse you of being secretive or cold. Let them. Their discomfort with your boundaries is not your emergency. You are not responsible for making people feel included in decisions that don't include them. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop explaining, you stop doubting. When you stop justifying, you start trusting yourself more. When you stop seeking external validation, you build internal certainty. That's the shift. Every time you over-explain, you're telling yourself, I'm not sure about this. I need someone else to confirm I'm doing the right thing. Every time you refuse to explain, you're telling yourself, I trust my judgment. I don't need external confirmation. I know what I'm doing. Which person do you want to be? The one constantly looking for permission? Or the one who gives themselves permission? You choose. Right now. And if you choose the latter, if you choose self-trust over external approval, then you stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter. You save your energy, you protect your certainty, you move faster. Because while everyone else is debating whether you should do it, you've already done it. That's the advantage. That's freedom. You've mastered the art of not explaining. You've reclaimed your decision-making authority. You've stopped auditioning for approval. Now let's talk about what happens when something triggers you. When someone says something that hits a nerve, and your first instinct is to react immediately. That's where most people lose. But not you. Not anymore. Chapter 3. The 48-Hour Rule. Let time filter the noise. You've stopped explaining yourself. Now you need to stop reacting immediately. This is critical. This is where emotional detachment either becomes real or falls apart. Because here's what happens. Someone says something that triggers you. A criticism, an insult, a dismissal, and instantly you feel it. That surge, that heat, that overwhelming need to respond right now. Don't. In the heat of the moment, your emotions are chemically hijacked. Cortisol floods your system. Rational thinking shuts down. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and restraint, goes offline. You're not you anymore. You're a threat response machine, and the person who reacts in that state, they lose. Every single time. They send the email they can't unsend. They say the words they can't take back. They make the decision they'll regret tomorrow. The person who reacts instantly is controlled by external forces. The person who pauses controls their reality. That's the difference. That's the 48-hour rule. Here's how it works. When something triggers you, when someone says something that stings, that pisses you off, that makes you want to fire back immediately, You commit to waiting 48 hours before responding. Not 48 minutes, not 48 seconds, 48 hours. 2 full days. You sit with it. You process it. You let time filter the noise. And here's what you'll discover. 80% of the things that enrage you today will be completely irrelevant in 48 hours. 80%. That co-worker's passive-aggressive comment in the meeting. In 2 days, you won't even remember what they said. That text from your ex that made your blood boil. In 48 hours, it won't matter. That social media post that felt like a personal attack. Give it 2 days. You'll realize it wasn't even about you. Time is the filter that separates what matters from what doesn't. But you have to give it time to work. Most people don't. Most people react in the first 5 minutes. They respond from a place of emotion, not clarity. They make decisions based on feelings that will evaporate by tomorrow. And then they spend the next week dealing with the consequences of a reaction they can't undo. You're not doing that anymore. From this moment forward, you practice the 48-hour rule. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You feel that surge of anger. Immediately you think, 48 hours. Would this matter in 48 hours? No, so you let it go, right there, in real time. A colleague undermines you in a meeting. You feel that sting of betrayal. You want to confront them immediately. But you think, 48 hours. You wait, you process. And by the time 48 hours pass, you realize their comment revealed their own insecurity, not your inadequacy. Your boss gives you harsh feedback. Your first instinct is to defend yourself, to fire off an email explaining why they're wrong. But you stop. 48 hours. You sit with the feedback. You separate the emotion from the content. And maybe, just maybe, you realize there's something useful in there once you remove the sting. That's the power of the pause. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's strategic dominance over your own nervous system. Here's the mantra. If it still matters in 48 hours, then I'll address it. Say it again. If it still matters in 48 hours, then I'll address it. This becomes your automatic response to every trigger. Someone says something that hurts. If it still matters in 48 hours, then I'll address it. Someone challenges your authority. If it still matters in 48 hours, then I'll address it. Someone disrespects you publicly. If it still matters in 48 hours, then I'll address it. Notice what this does. It creates space. Space between the trigger and the reaction. Space between the emotion and the decision. Space between what happened and what you do about it. And in that space, you regain control. Because here's the truth, most things don't deserve a response. Most provocations are designed to get you to react so the other person can feel powerful. Most insults are projections that have nothing to do with you. The 48-hour rule lets you see that clearly. Let me give you a real-world example. A professional receives an email from a client. The tone is harsh. The words are accusatory. The implication is that the professional screwed up. First instinct, respond immediately. Defend, justify, explain, prove the client wrong. But instead, they apply the 48-hour rule. They don't respond. They sit with it. They reread the email the next day with fresh eyes. And guess what they discover? The client was venting about their own stress. The harshness wasn't personal. And buried in the complaint was actually a legitimate concern that needed addressing. But not in the defensive, emotional way they would have responded at midnight. 48 hours later, they send a calm, professional response that acknowledges the concern, offers a solution, and maintains the relationship. If they had responded immediately, that relationship would be damaged, maybe beyond repair. The pause saved everything. That's what the 48-hour rule does. It saves you from yourself. It saves you from the version of you that's hijacked by emotion. The version that says things you don't mean. The version that makes choices your future self will have to clean up. Now here's the key. This doesn't mean you never address things. It doesn't mean you become passive or let people walk all over you. It means you respond from a place of power, not reaction. After 48 hours, if it still matters, if the issue is real, if the boundary was actually crossed, if the situation requires action, you address it. But you do it with clarity, with strategy, with control. You're not emotional anymore, you're calculated. And calculated always beats emotional. The person who waits 48 hours before responding is operating from their prefrontal cortex. Logic, reason, long-term thinking. The person who responds immediately is operating from their amygdala. Fear, anger, survival mode. Which one do you think makes better decisions? Which one do you think wins more often? The answer is obvious, so practice this. Make it automatic. Every time something triggers you, before you do anything, think 48 hours. Before you send that text, 48 hours. Before you make that call, 48 hours. Before you post that response, 48 hours. And then wait. Sit with it. Let time do its work. Here's what happens. Your brain starts to rewire. You train yourself to pause instead of react. You build the muscle of emotional regulation. You become someone who can't be easily provoked. And that's power. Real power. Not the fake power of getting the last word or putting someone in their place. The real power of being unbothered, unshaken, in control. People will test you. They'll say things designed to get a reaction. And you'll feel that old urge to respond immediately. But now you know better. Now you think, if it still matters in 48 hours, then I'll address it. And most of the time, it won't matter. It'll fade. It'll reveal itself as the noise it always was. And the few times it does still matter after 48 hours, you'll handle it with precision, with clarity, with the kind of response that actually solves the problem instead of creating new ones. That's the shift. That's emotional detachment in action. You've mastered the pause. You've learned to let time filter the noise. You've stopped letting other people's words hijack your emotional state. But here's the next level. Most of the pain you're experiencing isn't even coming from what actually happened. It's coming from the story you're telling yourself about what happened. And that story, it's usually wrong. Chapter 4. Separate facts from stories you tell yourself. You've mastered the pause. Now let's talk about why you're pausing in the first place. Because most of the time you're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to the story you're telling yourself about reality. And that story is usually catastrophically wrong. Your brain is not designed for accuracy. It's designed for survival. So it fills gaps with assumptions. And those assumptions, they're almost always negative. Someone doesn't text back. Your brain doesn't think they're probably busy. Your brain thinks they hate me. Your boss seems distant in a meeting. Your brain doesn't think they're preoccupied with something else. Your brain thinks, I'm getting fired. Your friend gives a short response. Your brain doesn't think they're having a bad day. Your brain thinks, I did something wrong. None of these are facts. They're stories. And you're destroying yourself over stories. Here's a real-world example. You send a text to a friend, a genuine, thoughtful message. They respond 3 hours later with K. Just the letter K. And instantly, your brain goes to work. They're mad at me. I said something wrong. They don't want to be friends anymore. I'm too much. I'm annoying. They're pulling away. You spiral. You obsess. You reread your original message 17 times looking for what you did wrong. You ruin your entire afternoon over this. And then you find out later they were in back-to-back meetings. Their phone was dying. They sent K because it was quick and they were rushing. It had nothing to do with you. You created an entire narrative out of nothing. You suffered over a story, not a fact. That's what your brain does, constantly, automatically. It catastrophizes, it misinterprets, it assumes the worst, and you believe it. Every single time. Stop. Here's what you need to understand. There's what actually happened, and there's what you think it means. Those are two different things. What actually happened is a fact. What you think it means is a story. Facts are neutral, stories are optional, and most of your suffering lives in the gap between the two. So here's the protocol. Before you spiral, before you react, before you let your brain run wild with assumptions, you ask yourself 3 questions. Question 1. What actually happened? Just the observable facts. No interpretation, no assumption, no mind reading. Your coworker didn't say good morning. That's what happened. That's the fact. Nothing more. Question 2. What story am I telling myself about what happened? This is where you catch yourself. This is where you identify the interpretation you've added. My coworker didn't say good morning, and the story I'm telling myself is that they don't respect me. that they're mad at me, that I did something wrong. Now you see it. You see the story separate from the fact. Question 3. What else could this mean? This is where you generate alternatives. Because if you can tell yourself one story, you can tell yourself 10. Maybe your coworker didn't see you. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they're dealing with something personal. Maybe they're stressed about a deadline. Maybe they're just not a morning person. Any of those could be true. All of those are just as likely as your catastrophic interpretation. But your brain didn't offer those. Your brain went straight to the worst-case scenario, because that's what it does. Your job is to interrupt that pattern. Let me give you another example. You don't get the promotion you applied for, someone else gets it. Here's the fact, you didn't get the promotion. Here's the story most people tell themselves. I'm not good enough, they don't value me. I'll never advance here, I should just quit. Now apply the protocol. What actually happened? You didn't get this specific promotion at this specific time. That's it, that's the fact. What story are you telling yourself? I'm not good enough. What else could this mean? The other person had more experience in that particular area. The timing wasn't right. The company needed a different skill set for this role. You're being prepared for something better. This job wasn't the right fit anyway. You see the difference? The fact doesn't change, but the story, the meaning you assign to it, completely changes your emotional response. And here's the key. You get to choose which story you tell yourself. You don't have to believe the first one your brain offers. You don't have to accept the catastrophic interpretation as truth. You can choose a different story. One that's just as valid, maybe more valid. So start labeling your thoughts in real time. My friend cancelled plans, that's a fact. My friend doesn't want to hang out with me anymore, that's a story. I made a mistake at work, that's a fact. I'm going to get fired. That's a story. My partner seems quiet tonight, that's a fact. They're unhappy with me. That's a story. This simple separation diffuses 90% of emotional hijackings before they start. Because once you see the story as a story, not as truth, you stop giving it power. You stop spiraling. You stop obsessing. You stop creating suffering out of thin air. Here's what this looks like in practice. You're scrolling social media. You see that your friends went out without inviting you. Old pattern, immediate spiral. They don't like me. I'm being excluded. I'm not part of the group anymore. New pattern. That's a fact. They went out. That's a story. They don't like me. What else could this mean? It was last minute. It was a small group. They knew I was busy. I wasn't excluded. It just wasn't my night. You see what happens? You take back control. You stop letting your brain run wild with assumptions. You stop creating problems that don't exist. Most of your emotional pain is self-inflicted. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because you're confusing stories with facts. And the moment you separate the two, everything changes. You become harder to disturb, harder to destabilize, harder to throw off your game. Because you're no longer reacting to interpretations. You're dealing with reality. And reality is almost always less dramatic than the story. Here's the practice. For the next 48 hours, every time you feel triggered, ask yourself, is this a fact or a story? Someone seems upset. Fact or story? Story. You think you said something wrong. Fact or story? Story. You feel like people are judging you. Fact or story? Story. Once you start labeling, you'll realize how much of your emotional life is based on fiction. And fiction doesn't deserve your energy. Save your energy for facts, for things that actually happened, for situations you can actually address. Everything else? Let it go. Because here's the truth, you can't control what happens. But you can control what you make it mean. That's power. That's where emotional detachment lives, not in ignoring reality, but in seeing reality clearly, without the catastrophic stories your brain wants to add. Facts are neutral. Stories are optional, remember that. Drill that into your consciousness. Every time your brain offers a story, you ask, is this the only interpretation, or just the first one? And then you choose deliberately. You've learned to separate facts from stories. You've stopped spiraling over interpretations. You've taken back control of your internal narrative. Now let's talk about where your identity lives. Because if it's tied to the wrong things, none of this will stick. Chapter 5. Build your identity on what you control. You've stopped believing the stories. Now let's talk about the foundation underneath all of this. Your identity. Because here's the problem, most people build their identity on things they can't control. And when those things disappear, they collapse. Your job title, your relationship status, your bank account, other people's praise. If that's who you are, if that's where your value comes from, you're building on quicksand. And quicksand doesn't care how confident you were yesterday, it swallows you the moment the ground shifts. Think about the executive whose entire sense of self is wrapped up in their position. VP of something, director of whatever. That title isn't just what they do, it's who they are. And then the company restructures, they're laid off, and suddenly, they don't know who they are anymore. They were their job. And now the job is gone, so who are they? They have no answer, because they never built an identity separate from external validation. That's the trap. If your value is tied to your achievements, you're in danger, because achievements can be taken away. Titles can disappear, money can be lost, praise can stop. And if that's all you are, what happens when it's gone? You collapse. You're not doing that, not anymore. From this moment forward, you build your identity on what you control. Not on outcomes, on responses, not on results, on effort, not on external validation, on internal integrity. Here's what you control: the effort you give, the integrity you maintain, the growth you pursue. That's it. Those three things. And those three things, they're permanent. No one can take them from you. No market crash, no breakup, no failure, no criticism can touch them. You control your effort, always. Someone can reject your work, but they can't take away the fact that you gave everything you had. Someone can dismiss your results, but they can't erase the hours you put in. Someone can question your success, but they can't deny your work ethic. Effort is yours. Forever. You control your integrity, always. Someone can lie about you, but they can't make you a liar. Someone can cheat, but they can't force you to cheat. Someone can compromise their values, but they can't touch yours. Integrity is yours. No matter what. You control your growth, always. Someone can outperform you today, but they can't stop you from improving tomorrow. Someone can have more experience, but they can't prevent you from learning. Someone can be ahead of you, but they can't freeze you in place. Growth is yours. No one else gets a vote. That's the unshakable core. Effort, integrity, growth. Build your identity on that, and you become untouchable. Here's the shift. You stop saying, "I am successful," or "I am a failure." Those are outcome-based identities. They fluctuate. They're dependent on external circumstances. You start saying, "I am someone who gives maximum effort, regardless of outcome." You stop saying, "I am important because of my title." That's achievement-based identity. It's borrowed. It's temporary. You start saying, "I am someone who operates with integrity, regardless of who's watching." You stop saying, "I am valuable because people praise me." That's validation-based identity. It's unstable. It's exhausting. You start saying, "I am someone who pursues growth regardless of recognition." You see the difference? One version of you is dependent on things you can't control. The other version is rooted in what you own completely. One version is fragile, the other is indestructible. Which one do you want to be? The person whose entire sense of self shatters when they lose the promotion? Or the person who maintains their identity because they know they gave everything they had? The person who falls apart when the relationship ends? Or the person who walks away with their integrity intact because they showed up fully even when it didn't work out? The person who feels worthless when the project fails? Or the person who knows their value isn't determined by one result because they're committed to continuous improvement? You choose, right now. Here's the mantra: I am not my results, I am my response. Say it out loud. I am not my results, I am my response. This rewires everything. You don't get the client. Old identity says, "I'm not good enough." New identity says, "I am not my results, I am my response." And my response is to learn from this, adjust my approach, and prepare harder for the next pitch. You get criticized publicly. Old identity says, I'm a failure. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent. New identity says, I am not my results. I am my response. And my response is to extract the useful feedback, discard the noise, and keep improving. You lose the competition. Old identity says, I'm not talented. I'll never succeed. New identity says, I am not my results. I am my response. And my response is to train harder, study the winner's strategy, and come back stronger. This is how you become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because your identity isn't on the table. Your worth isn't up for debate. Your value isn't dependent on external validation. You know who you are, someone who controls their effort, maintains their integrity, and pursues growth. The rest is just feedback, just data, just information. It's not you. Here's a real-world example. Two people lose their jobs on the same day. Person 1 built their identity on their title. When the title disappears, they spiral. Depression, anxiety, identity crisis. They can't even update their resume because they don't know how to describe themselves without that position. Person 2 built their identity on effort, integrity, and growth. When the job disappears, they're disappointed. But they're not destroyed. Because they know who they are. Someone who works hard, operates with integrity, and continuously improves. The job was just a vehicle. It wasn't them. So they dust themselves off. They extract the lessons. They apply to the next opportunity. And they move forward. Same circumstances, completely different outcomes. Why? Because one person's identity was attached to something external. The other person's identity was rooted in something internal. External is fragile. Internal is permanent. So audit yourself right now. Where is your identity? Is it in your relationship? What happens if that ends? Is it in your income? What happens if that drops? Is it in your appearance? What happens when that changes? Is it in other people's opinions? What happens when those shift? If any of those disappearing would destroy your sense of self. You have work to do. You need to rebuild from the ground up. And here's how you do it. You start practicing the mantra every single day. I am not my results. I am my response. You apply for the job and don't get it. I am not my results. I am my response. You launch the project and it flops. I am not my results. I am my response. You try something new and fail publicly. I am not my results. I am my response. Over and over, until it becomes automatic, until your brain stops equating your worth with outcomes and starts recognizing your worth in how you show up. That's freedom. That's emotional detachment. Because when your identity is rooted in what you control, nothing external can shake you. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't deflate you. Success doesn't define you. Failure doesn't destroy you. You're steady, always. Not because you don't care, but because you know what actually matters. Effort, integrity, growth. Everything else is just noise. You've built your identity on the unshakable core. You've stopped tying your worth to external outcomes. You've become someone who can't be destroyed by circumstances. Now let's talk about the people who will test this foundation constantly. The ones who drain your energy and demand your emotional labor without earning it. Chapter 6. Stop competing for energy with emotional vampires. You've built your identity on solid ground. Now let's talk about the people trying to dig it up. Emotional vampires. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The people who leave you exhausted after every interaction. The ones who drain your energy systematically. The chronic complainers, the drama creators. The guilt trippers. They don't always announce themselves. They're not wearing a sign that says, I'm going to destroy your peace. But you know them by how you feel after you've been around them. Depleted, exhausted, heavy. Like you just ran a marathon, but all you did was have a conversation. That's not an accident. That's energy theft. And you're allowing it. Here's how they operate. They call only when they need something. They monopolize every conversation with their problems. They never take your advice, but they demand that you keep giving it. They make everything about their feelings, their drama, their crisis. And you show up. Every single time, you listen, you counsel, you support, you sacrifice your time, your energy, your peace. And what do you get in return? Nothing. When you need them, they're unavailable. When you have a problem, they're too busy. When you're going through something, they change the subject back to themselves. This is not a relationship. This is a transaction. And you're the only one paying. Stop. Here's the truth you need to accept. Emotional availability is earned, not owed. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your emotional bandwidth. Not family, not old friends, not anyone. Family ties don't justify toxicity. Shared history doesn't require endless tolerance. Being nice doesn't mean being available 24/7. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to say no, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if they call you selfish, even if they don't understand. Their emergency is not your assignment. Read that again. Their emergency is not your assignment. Just because someone is in crisis doesn't mean you're required to fix it. Just because someone is struggling doesn't mean you're responsible for carrying them. You can care about someone without being destroyed by them. That's the line. That's the boundary. And emotional vampires will test it constantly. They'll guilt you. I thought we were friends. I can't believe you're abandoning me. You're the only one who understands. Don't fall for it. Real friends don't weaponize your empathy. Real relationships don't require you to sacrifice your mental health to maintain them. Here's a real-world example. You have a friend. You've known them for years, and every time they call, it's a crisis. Their job is terrible. Their relationship is falling apart. Their family doesn't understand them. Their life is a disaster. And you listen. You give advice. You offer solutions. You spend hours talking them through it. And then they ignore everything you said. They make the same mistakes. They create the same drama. And then they call you again with the exact same problems. This isn't friendship. This is a one-sided therapy session where you're the unpaid therapist. And here's what's happening. They're not calling for solutions. They're calling for attention. They don't want to fix their problems. They want someone to validate their victimhood. And as long as you keep showing up, they'll keep calling. You're enabling the pattern by participating in it. So you stop, not because you don't care, but because caring doesn't mean destroying yourself. You set a boundary, and here's how you do it. The next time they call with the same crisis, you say, I don't have the capacity for this right now. That's it. 7 words, no apology, no explanation, no guilt. I don't have the capacity for this right now. And then you get off the phone. They'll push back. They'll make you feel guilty. They'll act like you're betraying them. Let them. Their discomfort with your boundary is not your responsibility. You're not being cruel. You're not abandoning them. You're protecting your peace. And your peace is not negotiable. Here's what you need to understand. Emotional vampires target people who have terrible boundaries. They seek out the empaths, the helpers, the fixers, the people who can't say no. And they drain them dry. Because people with weak boundaries believe that caring means being endlessly available. They believe that love means sacrifice. They believe that friendship requires suffering alongside someone. That's a lie. Real care includes self-preservation. Real love includes boundaries. Real friendship includes mutual respect. And if someone can't respect your boundaries, they don't respect you. So you limit exposure. You reduce contact. You protect your energy like it's the most valuable thing you own. Because it is. You have a finite amount of emotional energy every day. Let's say it's 100 units. Every time you engage with an emotional vampire, you're spending units you can't get back. That draining phone call? 20 units. That toxic coworker venting for an hour? 15 units. That family member guilt-tripping you? 10 units. Before you know it, you're at 0. You have nothing left for your goals, your growth, your actual priorities. You've spent everything on people who don't invest in you. That's not compassion. That's self-destruction. So you become strategic. You protect your energy like a CEO protects their time. You ask yourself before every interaction, is this worth my energy? Your difficult relative wants to rehash old drama. Is this worth my energy? No. You decline the conversation. Your needy friend wants to complain about the same situation for the 100th time. Is this worth my energy? No. You set a time limit. Your coworker wants to drag you into office politics. Is this worth my energy? No. You stay neutral and walk away. This isn't cold. This isn't heartless. This is conservation. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot save people from themselves. You cannot fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. And the moment you accept that, the moment you stop trying to rescue people who won't do the work, you reclaim your power. Here's the practice. I don't have the capacity for this right now. Memorize it. Use it. Without guilt. When someone tries to dump their emotional baggage on you at an inconvenient time, you say it. When someone demands your attention without considering your needs, you say it. When someone tries to make their crisis your responsibility, you say it. I don't have the capacity for this right now. And then you stop talking. You don't apologize. You don't explain. You don't justify. You've said what needs to be said. Their reaction is their problem, not yours. If they're offended, let them be offended. If they pull away, let them pull away. If they accuse you of being selfish, let them. Anyone who punishes you for having boundaries is exactly the person you needed to distance yourself from. That's the filter. That's how you know who deserves your energy and who doesn't. The people who respect your boundaries stay. The people who violate them reveal themselves, and you let them go. Without guilt, without regret. Because here's the truth. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. You can't show up for the people who matter if you're depleted by the people who don't. You can't build your life if you're constantly managing other people's chaos. You can't become who you're meant to be if you're carrying everyone else's weight. So you stop competing for energy with emotional vampires. You stop engaging. You stop explaining. You stop tolerating behavior that drains you. You protect your peace. Fiercely, unapologetically, because your peace is your power. You've learned to identify emotional vampires and set boundaries with them. You've stopped allowing people to drain your energy without earning access. You've protected your peace. Now let's reframe one of the most painful experiences people face: rejection. Because what you think is failure is actually acceleration. Chapter 7. The Rejection Paradox. They saved you time. You've protected your energy. Now let's talk about what happens when someone tells you no. Rejection. Most people treat it like a death sentence, like a confirmation of their worst fears, like proof that they're not good enough, they're wrong. Rejection is not failure. Rejection is information. And more importantly, rejection is efficiency. Every no you receive is someone saving you time. Every door that closes is redirecting your energy. Every person who rejects you is doing you a favor, whether they know it or not. Let me say that again. Rejection is a favor. Not in some distant philosophical way that you'll appreciate years from now. Right now, in the moment, the person who says no to you today just saved you months, maybe years, of wasted effort. Think about it. The job that doesn't hire you, that job wasn't the right fit. If it was, you'd have gotten it. The fact that you didn't mean something better is waiting. Or that role would have been a nightmare. Or you weren't actually ready for what it required. Either way, that rejection saved you time. The investor who passes on your idea, they weren't the right partner. If they were, they'd have said yes. Their no means you get to find someone who actually believes in what you're building. Someone who won't hesitate, someone who's all in. That rejection saved you months of chasing someone who was never going to commit. The person who rejects you romantically, they just told you they're not your person. They did you the courtesy of making it clear early instead of wasting your time pretending. That rejection saved you from a relationship that wouldn't have worked anyway. You see the pattern? Rejection is efficient filtering. It's the universe's way of saying, not this one. Keep moving. But most people don't see it that way. Most people take rejection personally. They internalize it. They let it define them. Someone says no and they think, I'm not good enough. No, the fit wasn't right. That's different. Here's the reframe. Every rejection is a time value calculation. Would you rather waste 6 months discovering something isn't right? 2 years? 10 years? Or would you rather find out immediately? Early rejection is a gift. It frees your time. It frees your energy. It frees your attention for opportunities that will actually work. The entrepreneur who gets rejected by 50 investors before finding the one who believes in the vision, those 50 no's weren't obstacles, they were accelerators, because every no brought them closer to the yes that mattered. Every rejection eliminated someone who would have slowed them down, second-guessed them, or pulled out at the worst possible moment. Those rejections weren't failures. They were filters. And the faster you get rejected by the wrong people, the faster you find the right ones. That's the paradox. The thing you fear most, rejection, is actually speeding up your success. But only if you reframe it, only if you stop treating it like a verdict on your worth and start treating it like data. Here's the mantra. That rejection just saved me months of wasted effort. Say it out loud. That rejection just saved me months of wasted effort. Now apply it everywhere. You apply for an apartment. They choose someone else. That rejection just saved me months of wasted effort. Maybe the landlord was terrible. Maybe the neighborhood wasn't safe. Maybe the building had problems you didn't see. You don't know what you avoided. But you avoided something. You pitch a client. They go with a competitor. That rejection just saved me months of wasted effort. Maybe they would have been difficult to work with. Maybe they wouldn't have paid on time. Maybe the project would have been a disaster. You just got filtered out of a bad situation. You ask someone out. They say no. That rejection just saved me months of wasted effort. Maybe you weren't compatible. Maybe they're emotionally unavailable. Maybe they would have wasted your time. You just avoided a relationship that wouldn't have made you happy. This is how you rewire your brain. You train yourself to associate rejection with efficiency, not inadequacy. You stop seeing no as a reflection of your value and start seeing it as redirection toward better opportunities. And here's what happens. You become fearless. Because if rejection is just information, if it's just the universe filtering out what won't work, then what's there to be afraid of? The worst-case scenario is someone saves you time. That's it. No one can reject your worth. They can only reject the fit. And the fit is either right or it's not. You don't control that, so why stress over it? The person who understands this applies everywhere. They pitch everyone. They try everything. They ask for what they want without fear. Because they know, the no's are just eliminating bad fits. The yeses will come from the right people at the right time. And they'd rather get 100 no's quickly than waste time hoping for a yes from someone who was never going to say it. Speed is the advantage. The faster you get rejected by the wrong people, the faster you find the right ones. So you stop taking rejection personally. You stop letting it slow you down. You stop using it as evidence that you're not good enough. You start seeing it for what it is. Efficient filtering. Here's a real-world example. 2 people apply for the same promotion. Person 1 doesn't get it. They spiral. They take it personally. They assume they're not valued. They lose motivation. They stop trying. They spend the next 6 months bitter and resentful. Person 2 doesn't get it either. But they think, that rejection just saved me months of wasted effort. They ask for feedback. They identify what they need to improve. They work on those areas. They apply for the next opportunity. And 3 months later, they get promoted to an even better role. Same rejection, completely different outcomes. Why? Because one person saw rejection as failure. The other saw it as redirection. One person let the no define them. The other let it refine them. That's the difference. And it's a choice. Your choice. Every time someone says no, you decide what it means. Does it mean you're not good enough? Or does it mean the fit wasn't right? Does it mean you should give up? Or does it mean you should keep moving? Does it mean you failed? Or does it mean you just eliminated one option and moved closer to the right one? You choose. And here's what you need to understand. The most successful people you know have been rejected more than you. Not less. More. They've applied to more things. They've been told no more times. They've faced more closed doors. But they kept moving. Because they understood the paradox. Rejection isn't the obstacle. Fear of rejection is the obstacle. The actual rejection. That's just information. That's just filtering. That's just the universe doing you a favor. So you thank them, silently, internally. The job that doesn't hire you. Thank you for saving me time. The investor who passes. Thank you for revealing you weren't the right partner. The person who says no. Thank you for making it clear so I can find someone who says yes. This is emotional detachment in action. You're not pretending rejection doesn't sting. You're not denying that it's disappointing. You're just refusing to let it define you. You're refusing to let it stop you. You're refusing to treat it like a verdict instead of data. And the more you practice this reframe, the more unstoppable you become. Because rejection stops scaring you. It starts exciting you. Every no means you're one step closer to a yes. Every closed door means you're moving toward an open one. Every person who doesn't choose you means you're available for someone who will. That's not toxic positivity. That's strategic thinking. That's understanding how probability works, how filtering works, how progress works. You can't get to the right opportunity without eliminating the wrong ones. And rejection is how you eliminate them, fast, so you stop avoiding it. You start seeking it. You apply for things you might not get. You ask for things you might not receive. You try things you might fail at. Because you know, the rejection won't kill you. It'll just save you time. And time is the only resource you can't get back. So you'd rather lose it to action and rejection than waste it on hesitation and regret. That's the shift. That's mastery. You've reframed rejection as efficiency. You've stopped taking no personally. You've trained yourself to see closed doors as redirection, not failure. Now let's talk about the skill that makes all of this possible. Strategic indifference. Chapter 8. Master the art of strategic indifference. You've reframed rejection. Now let's talk about the skill that separates the focused from the distracted. Strategic indifference. This is not apathy. This is not coldness. This is not becoming a robot. This is precision. You still care deeply about what matters. Your goals, your growth, your loved ones, your mission. Those things get your full attention. Everything else, you become ruthlessly indifferent. Gossip, social media drama, petty workplace politics, strangers' judgments, comment section arguments, who said what about whom. None of it gets your energy. Not because you're cold, because you're strategic. Here's the truth most people don't understand. Your attention is your most valuable resource, more valuable than your time, more valuable than your money. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows. And where your energy goes, your life goes. If you're spending your attention on noise, your life becomes noise. If you're spending your attention on what matters, your life becomes meaningful. It's that simple. But most people give their attention away for free. To anyone who asks. To anything that triggers them. To every distraction that crosses their path. And then they wonder why they're not making progress. You're not doing that anymore. From this moment forward, you operate with strategic indifference. You have exactly 100 units of emotional energy every day. Not 101. Not 150. Exactly 100. And every time you get upset about something trivial, you're spending units you can't get back. Someone's passive-aggressive comment costs you 10 units. Worrying about what your ex is doing costs you 20. Stressing over a stranger's opinion costs you 15. Engaging in an online argument costs you 25. Before you know it, you're at 0. You have nothing left for the things that actually build your life. Your goals get 0 units. Your relationships get 0 units. Your growth gets 0 units because you spent everything on liabilities instead of assets. That's not emotion. That's bankruptcy. So you become strategic. You protect your emotional budget like a CEO protects their company's resources. And here's how you do it. Before every reaction, you ask yourself one question. Is this worth my energy? Someone says something that triggers you. Before you respond, before you spiral, before you engage, pause. Is this worth my energy? If the answer is no, you walk away. No explanation, no justification, no engagement. You just move on. Let me give you a real-world example. You're at work. A coworker makes a snide comment about your project in a meeting. You feel that surge. That need to defend yourself. That urge to put them in their place. Old version of you responds immediately. Defends. Argues. Spends the next 3 hours replaying the interaction in your head. Texts 5 people about it. Lets it ruin your entire day. New version of you pauses. Is this worth my energy? You realize this person is insecure. Their comment reveals their inadequacy, not yours. Engaging won't change anything. It'll just drain you. So you don't respond. You let it sit there. You continue with your presentation like nothing happened. And guess what? The moment passes. The meeting moves on. And you still have your 100 units intact. That's strategic indifference. You didn't pretend it didn't happen. You didn't suppress your feelings. You just decided it wasn't worth your energy. And that decision protected your peace. Here's another example. You're scrolling social media. You see a post. Someone's wrong opinion about something you care about. You feel that urge to correct them, to comment, to engage. Stop. Is this worth my energy? Will commenting change their mind? No. Will it improve your life? No. Will it move you closer to your goals? No, so why do it? You don't. You scroll past. You let them be wrong. You save your energy for something that actually matters. That's power. Real power. Not the fake power of winning an argument with a stranger. The real power of being unbothered, unshaken, focused. The person who masters strategic indifference doesn't engage in office gossip. They don't argue in comment sections. They don't check who viewed their social media. They don't stress over things they can't control. Not because they don't care about anything, because they care so much about the right things that they can't afford to waste energy on the wrong things. That's the distinction. Apathy says nothing matters. Strategic indifference says only specific things matter, and I'm protecting my capacity to focus on them. Completely different. One is depression, the other is discipline. And discipline always wins. So you practice the filter every single day, 50 times a day if necessary. Your neighbor is loud. Is this worth my energy? If it's affecting your sleep, yes. You address it once, clearly. If it's just annoying, no. You get noise-canceling headphones and move on. Someone unfollows you on social media. Is this worth my energy? No, you don't even notice. A colleague takes credit for your idea. Is this worth my energy? Maybe. If it's a pattern, yes, you document and address it strategically. If it's a one-time thing, no, you let it go and focus on the next project. You see how this works? You're not ignoring everything. You're filtering ruthlessly. You address what needs addressing. You let go of everything else. And the more you practice this, the more automatic it becomes. Your brain starts to filter in real time. Something happens. Your brain immediately asks, is this worth my energy? And if the answer is no, you don't even feel the urge to engage. You just keep moving. That's mastery. That's when strategic indifference becomes your default operating system. And here's what happens. You become unreachable. Not physically, emotionally. People can say whatever they want about you. It doesn't land. You're indifferent. Situations can unfold however they unfold. You're not rattled. You're indifferent. Drama can erupt all around you. You're not involved. You're indifferent. Because you've decided none of that is worth your energy. And the moment you make that decision, the moment you protect your attention like it's sacred, everything changes. You have more energy for your goals, more clarity for your decisions, more peace in your daily life, because you're not bleeding energy on 1,000 small cuts. You're not getting distracted by every shiny object or sharp comment. You're focused, relentlessly focused, on what matters. Only what matters. Here's the daily practice. Every morning before you start your day, you remind yourself, I have 100 units of energy today. I will spend them wisely. And then throughout the day, before every potential reaction, you ask, is this worth my energy? Email from a difficult client. Is this worth my energy? Yes, you respond professionally and move on. You don't ruminate. News headline that triggers you. Is this worth my energy? No, you're informed, but you're not going to spend 2 hours doom scrolling. Friend's vague social media post that seems directed at you. Is this worth my energy? No, if they have something to say, they can say it directly. Most things aren't worth it. Most battles aren't yours to fight. Most noise isn't worth acknowledging. And the faster you accept that, the faster you become unstoppable. Because while everyone else is distracted by everything, you're focused on the one thing that moves your life forward. While everyone else is fighting small battles, you're winning the war. While everyone else is spending their energy on things that don't matter, you're investing yours in things that do. That's the advantage. That's strategic indifference. You care deeply about what matters. You're ruthlessly indifferent to everything else. No guilt, no apology, no explanation. Your attention is your power. Your energy is your currency. And you've decided to spend it only on what multiplies it back. Everything else can wait. Everything else can pass. Everything else is background noise. And you're focused on the signal. You've mastered strategic indifference. You've learned to filter noise from signal. You've protected your attention like it's your most valuable asset. Now let's talk about the infrastructure that makes all of this sustainable. Your peace. Chapter 9. Protect your peace like it's your most valuable asset. You've mastered strategic indifference. Now let's talk about what you're actually protecting. Your peace. Not as a reward, not as something you earn after you've handled everything else, not as a luxury you get to enjoy when life finally calms down. Your peace is the foundation. It's the infrastructure. It's the non-negotiable base that makes everything else possible. Without peace, your decision-making deteriorates. Your relationships suffer, your health declines, your performance drops. Everything falls apart when your peace is compromised. So stop treating it like it's optional. Your peace is not something you fit in when you have time. It's the thing you protect first, so you have the capacity to handle everything else. Think about it like this. You're a high-performance machine, and peace is the fuel. Without fuel, the machine doesn't run. Doesn't matter how talented you are. Doesn't matter how ambitious you are. Without peace, you're operating on empty. And operating on empty always leads to breakdown. So you guard your peace. Religiously, ruthlessly, unapologetically. Here's a real-world example. The entrepreneur who protects their morning routine like it's sacred. No emails, no news, no stress. The first 2 hours of every day belong to them. Why? Because they've learned that protecting those first 2 hours of peace determines the quality of their entire day. If they start the day in chaos, checking messages, reacting to problems, absorbing everyone else's urgency, they spend the rest of the day playing defense, reacting, scrambling, out of control. But if they protect those first 2 hours, meditation, exercise, planning, whatever brings them peace, they spend the rest of the day playing offense, proactive, focused, in control, same 24 hours. Completely different outcomes. The difference? They protected their peace first. That's what you're learning to do. Not just in the morning, all day, every day. You identify what destroys your peace and you eliminate it. Systematically, start with an audit. Right now, think about the last week. Which people consistently destroy your peace? Which habits? Which environments? Which commitments? Write them down. The friend who always brings drama, the news cycle that triggers anxiety, the social media that breeds comparison, the commitment you said yes to out of guilt. Now here's the hard part. You remove them. All of them. Not slowly. Not gradually, not when the time is right. Now, because here's what you need to understand. You don't need permission to protect yourself. You don't need to justify removing peace violators from your life. You don't need to explain. You don't need to apologize. Your peace is your priority. Period. That friend who always brings drama? You limit contact. Maybe you stop answering every call. Maybe you set boundaries about what you'll discuss. Maybe you phase them out completely. Whatever it takes to protect your peace, you do it. Even if they don't understand. Even if they're offended. Even if they accuse you of changing. You are changing. You're prioritizing yourself, and anyone who has a problem with that is exactly the person you needed to distance yourself from. That's the filter. The news cycle that triggers anxiety. You stop consuming it. You check in once a day for 10 minutes to stay informed, then you're done. You don't scroll. You don't refresh. You don't let it hijack your mental space. The social media that breeds comparison, you delete the app. Or you limit it to 5 minutes a day. Or you unfollow everyone who makes you feel inadequate. Your peace is more important than staying connected to people who make you feel worse about yourself. The commitment you said yes to out of guilt. You back out, you send the message, you deal with the temporary discomfort of disappointing someone. Because disappointing others temporarily is better than destroying yourself permanently. That's the calculation, and once you start making it, Once you start protecting your peace above protecting other people's feelings, everything shifts. You wake up lighter. You move through your day calmer. You handle problems better. You show up stronger because you're operating from a place of peace, not depletion. Here's the non-negotiable daily declaration. My peace is my power. Say it right now, out loud. My peace is my power. This becomes your mantra, your reminder, your North Star. Every decision you make, you filter through this truth. Should I take this call? Does it protect my peace or violate it? Should I attend this event? Does it serve my peace or drain it? Should I engage in this conversation? Does it support my peace or threaten it? If it violates your peace, the answer is no. Every time, no guilt, no negotiation, no exceptions. Because peace is not weakness. Peace is not avoidance. Peace is the ultimate competitive advantage. When you're at peace, you think clearly. You respond strategically. You perform optimally. When you're disturbed, you're reactive. You're emotional. You're average. The person at peace dominates. The person in chaos survives. Which one do you want to be? Here's what this looks like in practice. You're having a good day. You're in flow. You're productive. You're at peace. Then someone texts you with their drama, their crisis, their emergency that has nothing to do with you. Old version of you drops everything, absorbs their chaos, lets it destroy your peace, spends the next 3 hours upset. New version of you checks the message, assesses if it's a real emergency or manufactured urgency. If it's real, you help, briefly, with boundaries. If it's manufactured, you respond, I don't have the capacity for this right now. And then you go back to your peace. You don't feel guilty. You don't apologize. You protected what matters most. That's the shift. You stop letting other people's chaos become your chaos. You stop absorbing energy that's not yours to carry. You stop sacrificing your peace for people who won't do the same for you. And here's what happens. You become magnetic. People notice. They see someone who's calm in the chaos, who's steady when everyone else is spiraling, who's focused when everyone else is distracted, and they want what you have. Some will respect it. They'll respect your boundaries. They'll honor your peace. Those people stay. Others will resent it. They'll test your boundaries. They'll try to guilt you back into chaos. Those people go, and you let them, without hesitation. Because protecting your peace means choosing yourself, even when others don't like it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you relationships that were draining you anyway. Your peace is not selfish, it's survival. You cannot show up for the people who matter if you're depleted by the people who don't. You cannot build your life if you're constantly managing other people's emergencies. You cannot become who you're meant to be if you're operating in chaos. So you protect your peace. Fiercely, daily, non-negotiably. Here's the practice. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you engage with the world, you say it. My peace is my power. And then you make decisions based on that truth. Before you say yes to anything, you ask, does this protect my peace? Before you engage with anyone, you ask, does this person honor my peace? Before you consume any content, you ask, does this support my peace? If the answer is no, you don't do it. Simple as that. And at the end of the day, before you sleep, you say it again. My peace is my power. You remind yourself. You reinforce it. You make it automatic. Because the world will constantly try to disturb your peace. People will demand your attention. Situations will create urgency. Drama will unfold around you, and you'll be tempted to engage, to react, to get involved. But you won't. Because you've decided your peace is more valuable than any of it. Your peace is your power. Repeat it until you believe it. Until you live it. Until it becomes the filter for every decision you make. When you're at peace, you're unstoppable. When you're disturbed, you're controllable. Choose peace, protect peace, prioritize peace. Everything else is negotiable. Your peace is not. You've learned to protect your peace as your foundation. You've eliminated peace violators from your life. You've made peace your non-negotiable priority. Now let's bring it all together and talk about what emotional detachment actually means. Chapter 10. Emotional detachment is freedom, not isolation. You've protected your peace. Now let's address the fear that's been sitting in the back of your mind this entire time. If I do all of this, if I stop taking things personally, if I set boundaries, if I become emotionally detached, will I become cold? Will I lose my ability to connect? Will I end up alone? No. That's the misconception. That's the lie people tell themselves to justify staying stuck. Emotional detachment is not disconnection. It's not coldness. It's not becoming a robot who feels nothing. It's the exact opposite. Emotional detachment means you love people without needing them to complete you. You care about outcomes without being destroyed by them. You engage fully without being controlled by circumstances. You're present, but you're not possessed. That's the distinction. Most people confuse attachment with love. They think caring means suffering. They think connection requires dependency. It doesn't. Real love doesn't need constant validation. Real connection doesn't require desperation. Real relationships thrive in freedom, not control, and emotional detachment creates that freedom. Here's a real-world example. Think about a healthy romantic relationship. Two people who genuinely love each other. Person one loves their partner deeply, but they don't need their partner to validate their worth. They don't fall apart when they disagree. They don't require constant reassurance. They don't make their partner responsible for their happiness. They love freely, without desperation, without control. That's emotional detachment creating space for real intimacy. Now think about an unhealthy relationship. One person loves the other, but it's suffocating. They need constant validation. They spiral over every small disagreement. They require their partner to prove their love constantly. They make their entire emotional state dependent on the other person's actions. That's not love. That's attachment. That's dependency. That's control disguised as care, and it destroys relationships. Because no one can carry the weight of being someone else's entire emotional foundation. That's not a partnership, that's a prison. So here's the paradox. You connect more deeply when you need less desperately. Read that again. You connect more deeply when you need less desperately. When you're emotionally detached from needing approval, needing validation, needing specific outcomes, you show up as your authentic self. No performance, no pretense, no desperation. And that attracts genuine connection. The irony is that the less you need people's approval, the more they respect you. The less you need the job, the better you interview. The less you need the relationship, the healthier it becomes. Because desperation repels, freedom attracts. Think about the person who's desperate for a relationship. They text too much. They seek constant validation. They lose themselves trying to please the other person. And what happens? The other person pulls away. Because desperation is suffocating. Now think about the person who's emotionally detached. They enjoy the relationship, but they don't need it to survive. They value the other person, but they're whole on their own. And what happens? The other person leans in. Because freedom is attractive. Same principle applies everywhere. The employee who's desperate to keep their job. They're exploited, they're underpaid, they're overworked, because their desperation gives their employer leverage. The employee who's emotionally detached. They do great work, but they know they'll be fine regardless. They have options, they have boundaries, they have standards, and they get promoted because confidence is valuable. The person who's desperate for friends. They tolerate disrespect, they ignore red flags, they maintain one-sided relationships. The person who's emotionally detached. They're a good friend, but they don't need friends to feel valuable. They set boundaries. They choose quality over quantity. And they attract real friendships, because self-respect is magnetic. You see the pattern? Emotional detachment doesn't make you cold. It makes you free. And freedom makes you attractive, successful, and genuinely connected. So what does this look like practically? It means you show up fully in your relationships, your work, your life, but you're not controlled by fear of loss. You love your partner, you invest in the relationship. You show up with your whole heart, but you're not terrified of them leaving. You're not checking their phone. You're not manufacturing drama to test their loyalty. You're present without being possessed. You care about your job. You give your best effort. You contribute meaningfully. But you're not defining your entire worth by your title. You're not falling apart if you get laid off. You're not sacrificing your health for a company that could replace you tomorrow. You're engaged without being enslaved. You have deep friendships. You support your people. You celebrate their wins and show up in their losses, but you're not destroyed if someone drifts away. You're not tolerating toxicity for the sake of history. You're not maintaining relationships that drain you. You're connected without being controlled. That's mastery. That's what you've been building toward this entire time. Every chapter has been preparing you for this understanding. Emotional detachment is not about caring less. It's about caring more precisely. You care so much about the right things that you can't afford to care about the wrong things. You care so deeply about your peace that you protect it fiercely. You care so much about your growth that you don't let temporary setbacks define you. You care so strongly about your integrity that you won't compromise it for approval. That's not coldness. That's clarity, and clarity is freedom. Here's the final integration statement. I am present without being possessed. Say it out loud. I am present without being possessed. This is your new operating system. This is how you move through life. You're fully engaged, fully invested, fully alive. But you're not hijacked by circumstances. You're not manipulated by need. You're not controlled by fear. You're here. But you're free. In your relationships, present without being possessed. You love deeply, but you're not dependent. In your work, present without being possessed. You perform excellently, but you're not defined by it. In your goals, present without being possessed. You pursue them relentlessly, but you're not destroyed if the path changes. In your daily life, present without being possessed. You experience everything fully, but nothing controls you. That's emotional detachment, and it's the most powerful way to live. Because when you're not possessed by outcomes, you can take bigger risks. When you're not possessed by opinions, you can be more authentic. When you're not possessed by fear, you can move faster. You become unstoppable, not because nothing affects you, but because nothing controls you. People can criticize you, it doesn't possess you. Situations can change, they don't possess you. Plans can fall apart, they don't possess you. You remain steady, always, not rigid. Steady, you adapt, you adjust, you respond. But you're never thrown off center, because your center is internal, not external. And an internal center can't be shaken by external circumstances. That's what you've built, over these 10 chapters. Through every reframe, every boundary, every moment of choosing yourself. You've built an internal foundation that nothing external can touch. You don't take things personally because you know their opinions are about them. You don't explain yourself because you don't need permission. You don't react immediately because you've mastered the pause. You don't believe catastrophic stories because you separate facts from fiction. You don't tie your identity to outcomes because you've rooted it in what you control. You don't tolerate emotional vampires because you protect your energy. You don't fear rejection because you understand its efficient filtering. You don't waste energy on noise because you've mastered strategic indifference. You don't compromise your peace because it's your foundation. And you don't confuse detachment with coldness because you understand freedom creates connection. This is mastery. This is emotional detachment. This is how you live untouchable, not because you don't care, but because you care so precisely that nothing irrelevant gets through. You are present without being possessed. Let that be your truth, your standard, your way of being. From this moment forward, you move through life differently. You engage differently, you love differently, you work differently, you're all in. But you're also free, and that combination, full engagement without possession, is unstoppable. The world will test you, people will push back, your old patterns will try to return, and every single time you'll remember, I am present without being possessed. You'll remember that their opinion is their reality, not yours. You'll remember that you don't need their permission. You'll remember that if it still matters in 48 hours, then you'll address it. You'll remember that facts are neutral and stories are optional. You'll remember that you are not your results. You are your response. You'll remember that your peace is your power. You'll remember that rejection just saved you time. You'll remember to ask, is this worth my energy? And you'll remember that emotional detachment is freedom, not isolation. This is who you are now. This is your new baseline. This is how you operate. Untouchable, unbothered, unstoppable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you've chosen what gets to affect you, and you've chosen wisely. Now go live like someone who knows their worth doesn't require external confirmation. Go be present without being possessed. Go be untouchable. Here's what you now know that most people will never understand. Taking things personally is a choice, not a condition. Every time someone criticizes you, you get to decide if their opinion becomes your reality. Every time something doesn't go your way, you get to decide if it defines you or refines you. Emotional detachment isn't about building walls, it's about building filters. You let in what serves you and you block what drains you. No guilt, no explanation, no apology. From this moment forward, you practice the 48-hour rule. You separate facts from stories. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter. You protect your peace like it's the only thing that matters, because it is. You become untouchable, not because you don't care, but because you care so precisely that nothing irrelevant gets through. This is your new operating system. This is your standard. The world will test you. People will push back. Your old patterns will try to return, and every single time you'll remember. Their opinion is none of your business. Your peace is your power. And you are present without being possessed. Now go live like someone who knows their worth doesn't require external confirmation. Go be untouchable.